Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, geeks of all ages, Jeffrey Powers here. It is time for another episode of This Week in Google Glass, where we're going to talk about propositions. We're going to talk about photography. We're going to talk a little bit more about the privacy issues. We've got Luke here, and we're going to get it to you with This Week in Google Glass. We're starting it right now. Hey everybody, Jeffrey Powers here from Geekazine. You can find me over at geekazine.com. Think magazine, put in the geek, you got Geekazine. And of course, thisweekingoogleglass.com, where you can find out all the cool stuff about Google Glass. The person to my left, my right, your left, yeah, your left, my right, is Luke. Luke, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, my name is Luke Wallace. I'm a developer down in the Explorer program in Dallas, Texas. I'll be joining Jeff every week here, and my Twitter handle is Luke Luca, and you can find me on Google Plus, and of course in the show notes if you have any other questions for me.
And last week I announced some email addresses that you can go to. You can still go to those, but Luke, we talked afterwards, and Luke goes, "Well, do you have twig.tv or twig. What anything else?" It's like, I don't know. I'll check it. I looked for Twig, TWIGG.com, and that was taken. But then I turned around and looked at the TV, and TV was available, so we snatched it up. And now if you go to Twig, TWIGG.tv, you can get to This Week in Google Glass. Of course, thisweekingoogleglass.com will also get you to the same place, so don't worry about it. So you can either email me at jeff@twig.tv, or Jeff at thisweekingoogleglass.com, or Luke at twig.tv or thisweekingoogleglass.com. That's got to be even more confusing than it sounds. I don't know. So, what was that?
Clear as mud. Thanks, Jeff.
Yes. Well, it really doesn't matter to you. It's when they email, it's just going to go to your email address.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'll all be good. So, anyway, let's get into this week's Twig. This Week in Google Glass, and we're going to start over somewhere. Where are we? Oh yeah, one more thing. Hey, if you're up on Google Plus, remember I have the Glass Holes community, which you can go to, and also Robert Scoble has. If you've got Flipboard, if you've got an iPad or something like that, go over to Flipboard, subscribe to the Glass Holes community on Flipboard, and you'll find out all the cool news on Google Glass. You can always submit a story, and of course, if you have Google Glass and you want to tell us some stories, let me know, and we'll get you on a show. We record every single Monday night. So, all right, let's start with the first article. We were speaking of trying to get people on. I was trying to get Rosa on. It didn't happen. We might have her on a future episode. The question of Google Glass destroying your love life. And the article went like this. Apparently, a person went on a date, and the date had a pair of Google Glass and wore the Google Glass during the date. And she was a little bit put off, and Rosa talked about it a little bit. And it was really interesting on the dynamic of the other end of the coin. And that's what we're going to talk about first. So Luke, what did you think of the article?
I thought it was great. It gave a lot of insight into a woman's perspective on what it's like. A lot of it was relevant to people, both sexes, of just how much attention you get to it, or get from wearing Google Glass. It's still really limited right now, but a lot of people know about it, and so you're going to get probably a little bit more attention, especially in a social setting like a bar or something where everybody's kind of meant to be mingling around, talking to people. They see someone across the room wearing this thing that they've only seen on the internet.
Yeah.
That person's probably going to get a lot of attention. And if you're on a date where you're trying to have, maybe a little bit more private, conversation, you're not really trying to involve everybody in the room, and you're trying to get to know each other, that having all these strangers come up to you and say, "Hey, real quick, is that Google Glass thing? Could I see that? No, would you mind if I try it?" Like that, I can see that just kind of throws a wrench into it.
Does that happen to you a lot when you're out? And you're married, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm married. Sorry, ladies. You'll But yeah, not no, no, nobody's interested. I know.
Whatever. So
So
anyway,
anyway, so I haven't had that particular problem exactly of trying to get to know somebody new while wearing Google Glass. But I can tell you that when I've gone out just for simple dinner, a little local place or something, nothing fancy, I was surprised how much attention I got from it. We went to this little Chinese place near our house and go in there all the time, and they know us there. The waiter was just he saw it and I wore it in and he was like, wow, is that Google Glass? And I'm like, yeah, it actually it is. And so he was like, oh, it's so neat. And so I let him try it, and he was just blown away by it like most people are. And um, pretty neat. So yeah, it's like you'll get attention from just kind of all over. And I've done that same kind of thing, little social situations where I'm not trying to get a lot of attention necessarily. I'm just trying to kind of go about my day. People will definitely start up more conversations with you just because they're like, hey, I see you're wearing something there, and
yeah.
a lot of people that don't know what it is, they're just kind of like, hey, I can obviously tell that's not a normal pair of glasses. So,
Yeah.
what is that you're wearing? So I can understand that part of getting the attention, and I can understand also that on a date that's probably not great. And I know she mentioned there how her dates would get a little jealous because there'd be all these guys that would come up and you know yeah, they say they're talking about Google Glass, but they might also be interested in her a little bit and trying to show, hey, I know what I know what you're wearing, so
Oh,
and I'm cool too, right? So so I could see that
I
as a
never
guy
thought of
that
that.
would
Yeah.
that could be a little intimidating. So far, I haven't run into the kind of the version that I would have where like I've been out with my wife and then some girls come up and given me a lot of attention that she might not normally or definitely wouldn't normally. And so
That does
I haven't experienced that firsthand.
that does bring up a good question. Have you had a talk with your wife? Did you guys discuss when you get to wear Google Glass, when you don't get to wear Google Glass, and when she feels comfortable and uncomfortable about it? I know. If I was to have a pair, I'd probably sit down with Jennifer and talk about it with her and say, okay, this is when I'm going to wear Google Glass. This is when I'm not going to wear Google Glass, and stuff like that. Have you had a talk like that with your wife?
We've talked about it a little bit, not a whole lot. I've tried to, you know, police myself pretty well. Like we went to a movie the other night, and I didn't even take it to the mall, and because I didn't want to deal with having to keep it,
Yeah.
like safe while I'm in the movie and have to deal with anybody there. I do want to go to a mall sometime, and I've told her that I want to go to the mall sometime when she wants to go, and I want to wear them and just kind of see what that's like and see do people notice, do people feel uncomfortable, in kind of more public setting like that. Um, but yeah, she hasn't had too strong of an opinion on. No, you're definitely not wearing those things. Um, it may not surprise you, but she already knows I'm a dork. So me wearing these doesn't like she's not afraid that other people are going to figure this out that I'm kind of geeky. So she's been very understanding and forgiving and stuff. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's. I think about it. It's like all the relationships that I've had over the years, and when I get my geek on, I'm wondering if I'm intimidating people or making them uncomfortable when I get into stuff like this. Jennifer understands, what I do and how I do it. So, and I have two geeks to me. I have my computer geek side, and then I have my musician geek side, which I'm well versed in both areas. So it gets a little bit tough for that. So I'm guessing that there's a lot of people that would be really put off on that. But yeah, I never even thought with the Google Glass, somebody coming up to the guys and fawning over the guys more than they're fawning over the date.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's an interesting thought off of that. So. All right, well, let's move on from there. We're going to go over an article we didn't get a chance to talk to about last week. We're going to bring that in this week. Google Glass Code has revealed an always-on listening mode. We talked about how you can root through the Google Glass, and they found a hidden browser in there. Well, they've also found that there is a way to turn on the always on listening mode. And I thought that was always on, Luke. Is that not always on or?
No, so how it works right now is when you wake up Glass and you see the time, kind of the start screen there, and it says "OK Glass" in quotes underneath. And that's kind of your hint that that's the wake up command.
Okay.
And what a lot of people think is that you can say that at any time, when it's off, when you're looking at something else. And right now, that's not how it works. You have to be on that first starting screen and say "OK Glass" to really start the voice command.
Okay.
And then no matter where you are, like, so you say "Okay Glass," you say a voice command, take a picture, and so it takes a picture and it shows it to you. And a lot of people think that then you can say "Okay Glass, take another picture," or take a picture again, or you can just keep talking to it.
Yeah.
And that's not really how it works. You have to kind of let it go to sleep and get back to that start screen through some method, either touching it or waking it up from sleep. And so what this is saying is that there is a mode in there that would enable that. So basically, wherever you are in the Glass UI, you could say "Okay Glass" and trigger all of those actions of take a picture, record a video,
Yeah.
send a message, hang out with, get directions to, all that kind of stuff. And you can do that from anywhere.
So you're not you didn't like take like 15 pictures there as we were talking, right?
No, absolutely not, because it wasn't awakened on that start screen when I was saying all those commands.
Okay.
And so it's nice because it doesn't prevent your vocabulary from being limited, from avoiding all of those terms, because you're afraid that you're going to trigger your Glass. You can say, "Okay, Glass, record a video," and it may, but only if it's in the right state. So
Okay.
So with this mode, that would be more possible. I'm sure the battery drains a little higher because then it's always having to listen, and so it's always doing this voice recognition. Just was that something? Did you say something? And I do Android development by day, and that's kind of a hard problem to solve, is the constant audio listening. And so by having those little triggers of we're only going to listen when you first turn on the device, it makes it a little bit easier from both a development standpoint, and it's better for battery life. So that's probably why they did it for now. We'll see exactly how that changes over to the future.
What was the battery life on the Glass right now?
If I charge it up and unplug it in the morning, I can usually get through the whole day with just average usage of taking a dozen pictures, getting a fair amount of notifications, maybe recording a video or two, that are fairly short, and getting through a whole day is not that big of a deal. It's nice if you can charge it in the middle of the day, but it's not usually required. So
okay. Speaking of taking videos, that comes up to our next article. This is over on the Huffington Post, and all the links, by the way, you can get over on thisweekingoogleglass.com, or twig.tv is the URL for that. Google Glass has had the first wedding proposal on Google Glass. I can't really show the video; it's on YouTube, but we'll have a link to the Huffington Post. It's just basically the guy gets on one knee and asks her to marry her. And you just watched that. What was your reaction on that, Luke?
It was sweet. You could really, kind of, jump into the eyes of this guy as he's going through this. I did think it was a little kind of awkward towards the end. Like the video was still going, and she's like, "Oh yes," and then she like leans in, and you hear all these little kissy noises, and you kind of see the side of her head a little bit, and you're like, okay, maybe you should have trimmed that part out a little bit, but I think it's fine. I think you're going to see a lot more of that kind of first-person perspective of different, little life events. I think the article that you linked to mentions, somebody's going to either live stream their wedding or take video of their wedding, while they're participating in it. So you'll see the groom's perspective, maybe the bride's perspective, maybe both. You'll be able to see, these videos of two people getting married while both wearing Google Glass, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of that. A lot of people do it just for the novelty.
Oh yeah, yeah. I could see I've done wedding videos before, and I know that there's wedding video photographers are always looking for a new angle, and if they had like two pair of Google Glass, they could give it, not during the whole ceremony, maybe during a certain part they put on the Google Glass, and if for that one special moment that they want to have, very intimate, they can turn it on. They can say, okay, glass, record, and then get everybody each other's reactions and go from there. So
Yeah.
pretty impressive on that video, and it didn't turn out too bad either. I thought with the wind and everything, it was going to be like, really horrible in the sound.
No, it was nice.
So, all right, well, let's move on from there. That was over on Huffington Post, by the way. We're going to move over to venturebeat.com. Now, this is an actually interesting article, and we talked about it for a couple minutes before we came on. It's about face recognition in Google Glass. And with the face recognition, Google has decided to ban Google Glass facial recognition for now. But that keeps the door open for down the road. And then of course the people that decide that they're going to not worry about what Google says and root this thing and actually create facial recognition apps of their own. So, what are your thoughts on this, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like anytime you see apps about, what's not allowed on iPhone, what's not allowed on Android, those kind of things. People can still make those apps because they still have all the developer tools. And really, what Google's saying is they're not going to allow those apps to be published through the normal, distribution methods, through their distribution methods, basically. So, if you want to load those on your Google Glass, or just like with iPhone and Android phones and whatever, you're going to have to find another channel to do that. And so that doesn't mean that people won't do that. It just means that a majority of people probably won't do that because it's a little more challenging.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you'll see it happen. People will be able to write that software, but I think that it'd be a big challenge anyway. I was just talking about battery life and how it's all day, but all day with reasonably light usage. I think I've seen the top end of constant video recording top out at maybe 30 or 45 minutes of video recording. So that's obviously not going to make it the whole day. So you can't just sit there and record people all day to do face recognition.
And of course, you're talking about the Google Glass, the current Google Glass, and that battery life. 3 years from now, that can completely change. And
absolutely.
Next thing you know, you can have it on in a rested state for a good amount of time and still have the ability to do facial recognition on that. So one thing that they said in the article at VentureBeat.com, quote, was many have expressed both interest and concern around the possibilities of facial recognition in glass. As Google has said for several years, we won't add facial recognition features to our products without having strong privacy protections in place. So, what kind of privacy programs would that? And so it's basically more than one app. You're talking about facial recognition app. You're talking about a privacy app, which would also be running constantly, correct?
Yeah. If you look at what they do with things like Google Plus, it can kind of suggest people that are in your circles that this might be. So, but it won't typically suggest someone who's not even in your circles as, oh, this looks like this is so and so, that we found on the internet or that we know uses Google Plus. So, what it might help you do is remember, the name of the person you're talking to, that you've talked to them before, you even friended them on Google Plus, and then you could see who that was. But if it's not somebody that you're already connected with in some way, they're not going to enable that of, just search the internet and find who this is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I guess it's like it's like with your phone. If somebody calls you, there's no caller ID on the phone. So, and I don't think that I don't even know if they're gonna even put caller ID on the phone with a person's name. So if I get a phone number, if you were to actually call me right now from your cell phone to my cell phone, I'd have no idea it was you unless I knew your number. So
exactly.
I think that would be the same thing with facial recognition in a reverse order.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. Once you add me into your contact list associated with that number, it can say, oh, well, I can look up the information that you could look up. I can just do it a lot faster. So it's the same kind of thing of, well, if you've got pictures of this person available to you through, their Google Plus profile that you've already, connected with, then I can match that up and show you who that is. So again, that's, I mean, I can't say for sure that that's what they'll do, but that would probably be the first step of uh, any sort of facial recognition. Is it has to be somebody that you already are connected to in some way, so that they can also prevent it of like, well, I don't want anyone who has me in their circles to be able to match me by facial recognition.
Yeah.
And so if they limit it to the people in your circles, and then they go check that person's profile to say, does this person allow anyone to find them via their face? You know, if they say no, then it's like, okay, we won't return a match on that. We'll say, you know, unknown or no match or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, you're kind of fading out on the Google Hangout side for some reason, and so let's wrap this up. We've got one more article here, and it's basically a video. I can't show the video because of copyright issues, but basically, it's done by Greg Gregovo, I think it is. It's a Google Glass photographer. You probably saw it last week. It's been circulating on Google Plus. It's been circulating on Facebook. It's just basically a parody video on a guy doing you with Google Glass. And the one thing that I did have to ask you is there's a point, you know, like for instance, when he wanted to do time lapse, and during the video you're seeing the time lapse, and then you're seeing him stand like this, like perfectly still, and the other thing was when he was trying to get some really good shots of a car, and he was like, you know, super face up into the car, and there was another scene where you saw this cop on a bike passing by looking at this guy really strange and stuff like that. To get good video, good pictures, do you have to do that type of stuff?
I would say, you know, short answer is probably yes, because what a lot of people don't think about is the camera on Google Glass is actually a fairly wide angle camera. I've taken quite a few pictures, and what surprises me is how much, you know, if you just look at something, let's say you're watching this video right now, and you just watch the video, and you think about how much you can really see, and you would be able to see kind of your peripheral vision, not what your focus is, and not way off on the sides, but just kind of, you know, what you're basically looking at, and, you know, what's right around that. That's really what Google Glass takes a picture of. And so if you want those little macro shots of a flower, yeah, you would really have to get up on it.
Yeah.
So a lot of what they were showing seems fairly realistic in that now they, you know, you don't, you know, to take a good time lapse, you would have to stand still. That doesn't mean you have to stay in any sort of awkward pose to do that, but you do have to try to maintain, you know, your current position. So,
well, I've even take time, like for instance, I do a lot of stock video stuff, which I throw up on different places. And when you do time lapse, the camera, even a camera on a tripod, does not stay perfectly still because the ground shakes. If you're on a bridge, the bridge shakes, or you know, whatever the situation, there's always some sort of movement that happens. And if you watch the video long, you know, I'll take an hour's worth of video, which will compress into 5 or 10 minutes. And when you do that and you look at it and speed up, you see the building move around. You actually have to put a stabilizing effect onto the video, and to really make it look perfectly still. And so it'd be interesting to see how a time lapse video works with Google Glass. And in fact, Luke, if you want to do a video, just stand as still as possible for about 3-4 minutes, and then send that video to me, and I'll try and stabilize it as best as possible and see what we come with Google Glass. Yeah, you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. I'll figure it out. I think I've got some good views at work. Maybe I can get some views of the highway or something that runs by there. And I've done some time lapse before. I would not say Google Glass is the ideal time lapse camera. So, you know, using the right tool for the job definitely is an important thing to remember here. But
yeah,
we can definitely kind of show that and say, well, here's what it would actually look like if you try to do a time lapse, and kind of disprove that idea of like, don't even bother. It won't pay off.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll do that, and we'll have that for future episode, and go from there. That's all the content I have for this week. So we're just going to wrap it up from here. My name is Jeffrey Powers. You can find me over at geekazine.com. Think magazine, put in a geek, you got Geekazine. Got the Geek Smack show, which I do every single Tuesday, and of course this week in Google Glass. iPad 365, I'm taking a little hiatus on that, so just check out the past episodes. Lots of cool iPad apps for you out there. And you can tweet me at Geekazine or Jeff at twig.tv. And Luke?
Yeah, so you can reach me on Twitter at Luca, LukeEluca. You can find me on Google Plus. Just search my name, Luke Wallace. Or as Jeff said, you can hit me at Luke at thisweekingoogleglass.com or Luke at twigg.tv. So that's TWIGG.tv. A little extra G in there. The extra G is for great. So.
We're all double G's here.
Yeah,
I have
double G's.
Double dog. Anyway, so. And of course, of course, if you do have a pair of Google Glass and you want to be on the show, feel free to email me and we'll go from there. Yeah, we'll go from there. So that was weird. You hear some? No, you don't hear. I'm hearing some interesting issue. Hopefully our audio is not kicked out here. So my name is Jeffrey Powers. Thanks a lot for coming to This Week in Google Glass. We might not be back next week. We might be back in 2 weeks, and I'll talk to you about that in a second there, Luke. So check it out over at twig.tv. This is This Week in Google Glass.